Good morning. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. A little bit windy out here. Going to talk to you this morning about training, group training, and more specifically, scheduling it, planning it, scheduling it. But first, by way of intro, two things. One, question for y'all. Is there an ideal way, direction for one's bed to face? I just saw a headline on Drudge this morning. I didn't open it up and read it, that some people have an internal magnet or something, compass, and they can tell, direction like animals or something. I don't know. I didn't read the article, but we recently moved our bed out of the living room, what's going to be the living room, into what is the bedroom for the first time in 2.5 years. Same bed, nothing changed on the bed itself. Didn't change sides of the bed. And we've been sleeping in this bed since Friday night in the new location. Man, I'm sleeping awesomely since we moved the bed. Now it is facing 90 degrees to the way it was facing before. And it got me wondering, is there a general direction humans are better off laying? And somebody here probably knows, so there's that. And then two, I've gotten guff, I think on YouTube. I usually get the guff on YouTube for my woodshed. And people said words to the effect of, "You call yourself a prepper." I love it when people start out a comment to me with, "You call yourself a prepper." Yeah, I certainly do. You call yourself a prepper? That wood shed should be full. Dude, I don't know where you live, but it's starting, despite my heavy jacket and 2 hoodies, it's starting to get warmer here. We haven't had a fire for the last couple days in our wood stove, and I just looked at the weather upcoming for the next week, and we may have a fire on 2 different nights. It's going to go down to like 35 and 37 or something, somewhere 33, something like that. We'll have a fire that night. I think I planned it perfectly. That's what we're going to talk about today, planning. I was talking with a person the other day, and he asked me if I could help him design a training plan for his group. Advice on such, not necessarily me design the training plan, but and his group, his prepper group, had in the past trained pretty regularly. And they hadn't done it for a while because, life. And he wanted help with that. And so I asked him a couple questions, and instead of going through that conversation, it just kind of spurred this video. And we'll just get into it. So the first thing is this, training is really important. You can't do what you don't know and haven't trained for. Not well, right? And we are all preppers. We all have our own individual visions of what maybe is coming, and what we need to do to get ready for that. And so we do little things, right? We take first aid classes, and we grow gardens, and we get a gun and hopefully get training on how to shoot it and those kinds of things. But training, because see, we're not soldiers. Right? I'm not a soldier anymore. A soldier has the luxury of training, and even soldiers don't have as much luxury to train as they would like. But their job is to get ready to fight, from the Army's perspective, the nation's land wars and battles. And so their job is to get ready to do that. And so all day, every day, supposedly, that's what they're getting ready to do, right? They're training for that. That is their job. Whereas the rest of us, we have real jobs. Military has wives and kids too, but I don't want to go there. For us, we have life, we have family, we have jobs, we have things we have to do, we have a spouse who may or may not be 100% on board with our craziness. Um, and so we've got to maximize our training opportunities. When we get the time to do some training, we have to make the most of it. We can't afford to be wasting resources, which is time and money and logistics. You know, you have 1,000 rounds of ammo. You could go bump fire it all out into the woods, or you could actually go to a course or go through a course of fire where you actually get better with your firearm, right? What do you want to do? It takes time and money, basically, is what it is. A lot of prepper groups, and I have been involved and associated with and advised and trained many. A lot of prepper groups spend a lot of time doing what I call tactical training. You know, shooting guns is huge. Let's have a range day. The better groups, let's do patrolling, you know, training, things like that. Here's what you got to do. You have to decide what you're training for. Why am I looking at the camera like that? Sorry. Here, I'll back up. What are you training for? You have to envision those things that you are going to be required to do. Required. Do or die. As a group. You need to develop your Metl. METL, Mission Essential Task List. What are the things you're going to have to do as a group? And then those are the things you should train on. Now, a Metl, a Mission Essential Task List, and again, I'm coming from my background, right? But it worked for me, and it works for me now, is about 4 or 5 things. So they're very broad things, and I'll give you an example. When I was in Special Forces at the detachment level, my Metl had about 4 things on it, Mission Essential Task List, and 2 of those were, one was conduct direct action, that's attacking things. The other one was conduct special reconnaissance, that's getting information, right, and reporting it. Those were Metls. That's what I was supposed to do in time of war. So that's what my guys had to be capable of doing. And so when we went to train, it had to support our Metl. It's like, it would be nice to go surfing for training, but if I couldn't articulate how surfing, and believe me, there were some creative people out there, well, we're going to evaluate surfing as a method for infiltration so that we could go in and conduct special reconnaissance. If you can sell that, you can go train on it. But it has to support your Metl, right? Everything you do has to support your key tasks. And then each task has a bazillion subtasks in it. You know, conduct direct action. Okay, that's pretty broad. You know, go, what does Rush Limbaugh say? Kill people and break things, right? You got to get there. You got to know how to do all these different tasks. When you get there, you got to get home, right? I mean, there's a bazillion tasks under each one, but it kind of focuses you on what you're trying to do. So for you, if you're planning with your group to come together on some kind of retreat, right, and live, you've got to have a vision of what you think the future looks like that you're training for. You got to have something that you're training for, right? You just can't say, well, I don't know what's going to happen, so we're not going to do anything. Well, how about you give it your best shot? You're probably going to want to sustain, which means homestead, right? You're going to want to feed the force, which is your group, from old people to little babies, right? Everybody in between. You're going to want to feed them, produce food, gather food, store food, prepare food. You're going to want to do all that stuff, life, right? You're probably going to want to defend, right? Have the ability to defend your place. So that's one, conduct defense. Yay, we get to go shoot guns. Maybe, under sustain the community, you want to do, like healthcare, because you don't see any healthcare coming. Things like that. Just come up with broad areas. You don't necessarily have to have a Metl, because you don't have a wartime task that's very focused, but you need to think in those lines. So what basically do I have to do? I'm going to run a homestead, and I have to be able to repel borders with the people I have. And we have to function as a community. Okay, now we're going to train. When you conduct training, there's two kinds of tasks. There are individual tasks everybody pretty much has to be able to do, or people with specific jobs have to be able to do for their job. In example, the medic has to know how to do certain things that maybe I don't need to know how to do, right? But the medic still has to know how to do that. But then there's collective tasks, things that require us to work together. A collective task for our purposes would be build a building, right? Build a shed, or a building, because a person can build a shed. A person can build a building too, but work with me here. Individual tasks, to the extent they can be for us preppers, should be trained by the individuals. Have some gumption, take some personal responsibility, and get training on those tasks. Now, maybe, an individual task is apply a tourniquet, all right? Okay, no one knows how to do a tourniquet in our group except Bob. Bob's going to give us all a class on apply a tourniquet, but then after Bob does that, it's kind of up to us to continue practicing putting on tourniquets so that we can save our own lives when the time comes, God forbid, right? So there's that personal responsibility, and it's a time thing. Let's get real. We all, like I said in the beginning of this video, we have real jobs, real lives, things going on, and if you're a really good group, you'll get together once a week to train. Most groups that I know get together every 4 to 6 weeks, for like a weekend or a day to do some training. If that's what you're doing, man, we don't have a whole lot of time to be doing individual tasks. We should be spending our time and money working on collective tasks. And you should do the important things, not the fun things, necessarily. Now, one important thing is maintaining morale, right? That's huge. But hopefully you have mature enough people that we don't need to have a party every time we get together in order to maintain morale, right? And so one way of maintaining morale is knowing that you are in the best group out there, able to do, anything you want. So you got to prioritize your training. What does a group have to do? You should picture that. My group is going to come together at Aunt Millie's farm. Okay, well, we are going to have to provide security, so that's one thing we're going to have to know how to do. And everyone has a role to play. If all of a sudden there's 10 bad guys at the front gate with bolt cutters trying to get in, and people start shooting, everybody from the 3-year-old to the 30-year-old warrior has to know what to do. They all have a role to play in this. And so that's a great group training thing. Let's practice what happens when this happens, right? Now, underneath that, there's a lot of subtasks. Maybe the task is repel borders. Given 10 people show up at the front gate with bolt cutters and rifles, whatever. That's your scenario. Okay, well, somebody has to take care of the kids. Somebody has to get the kids rounded up and sheltered. Somebody has to establish immediate enhanced security. Somebody has to form a reaction force. Somebody has to make contact with the potential bad guys. And if I guess they're shooting, they are bad guys. But if they haven't shot yet, we don't know. There's a lot that has to go on for the group, or you're just going to be running around like chickens with your head cut off when that happens. That could be a whole training day right there. How do we deal with 10 guys at the front gate? But by the same token, how do we deal with dinner, supper, under these new conditions? See, we don't have electricity, maybe in our plan we don't, or we're on the solar or whatever, and we have to prepare meals for 30 people. How are you going to do that? Well, everyone's going to be on their own. Okay, so everyone's got buckets of wheat and rice and Mountain House meals, and everyone's just going to go do their own thing, come back here in an hour? Is that how you're going to run your community? If that is, okay, that's not as hard then. That almost becomes an individual task as far as, families learn how to prepare your food. But if you plan on doing group feeds, there's a lot that goes into group feeds. Ask people who are in charge of them at churches. There really is a lot that goes into that, something that should be practiced. That was an interesting sound. See, I'm talking to you and I'm not being quiet. And I just lost my train of thought. More coffee is indicated. Oh. In the military, we used to say you have to be able to shoot, move, and communicate. That's a pretty good place to start from a tactical perspective, but it's also a good place to start from a group perspective. You have to be able to shoot, move, and communicate. You have to be able to function, let's just say, do the job that you're supposed to do as a group. You have to be able to move, and you have to be able to communicate. Do you know how to move as a group? On foot? In vehicles? In convoys? Do you know how to communicate? Do you have a text stream, email stream, radio network setup, runner plan? We'll send my teenager to his house. He'll go to those two houses. They'll go to those houses. That kind of thing. Shoot, move, and communicate. So that was shoot, communicate, and move. Yeah, so those are 3 good things to know how to do as a group. But here's what you should do. One should. I use that word a lot. It's how I speak. You should. If that offends you, then maybe you can phrase it in your head this way. You may wish to consider, as one possible idea, pursuing something along the lines of, see, too many words. You should. You should plan out your training schedule. You should, if you get together every 4 weeks, the first Sunday of every month we get together and do group training. Okay, you should know what you're going to do out there about 6 months out, so that you can assign instructors. Bob, I need you to give this class in 8 weeks. Let me know if you need any supplies to do this class, so that you can get people's minds right. Maybe you want everyone to read this book before you show up for training, so that we're all on the same sheet of music. That kind of thing. But you should plan it out, what you're going to do. And again, not again, this is only the first take, so we're doing good so far. You need to, that's like you should, you need to include everybody in your group in training. You don't have time to be alienating people. You want to be making your group stronger. And so if you're wondering why the guys' wives and kids aren't showing up while you guys are strapping on rucksacks and rifles and handguns and combat knives and getting ready to go out in the woods and go patrolling, you're not being very realistic. Grandma Moses ain't going on a patrol. But if you were smart, you could have concurrent training where Grandma Moses is teaching everyone a class on canning, how to can, I don't know, blackberries are in season or something. So Grandma Moses is giving a class on that, and one of the girls, teenage girls, maybe 2 of them, have the little kids over here in eyesight of the moms, teaching them, I don't know, little kid first aid or loss proofing or something, while the moms are over here playing with hot water and stuff. And then the patrollers, because I'm not being sexist, you got to use who you got. It could be young women also in that. The patrollers are patrolling around this training that's going on. That's starting to feel like real life in a grid down world without rule of law scenario. Maybe somebody in the homestead in the, where they're doing the canning has a radio and is monitoring it, and the patrol is checking in every now and then. Maybe somebody has a map on the wall and they're tracking the patrol when they call in their coded checkpoints. We're at checkpoint 3, over. Copy, I got you at checkpoint 3. So you could incorporate everybody into the training. You could make it fun for everybody, but you'd have to think it out ahead of time. You'd have to have a plan. I suggest you do so. Time is getting short. Now, some of you are already thinking, because I can tell by even your comments that some of you are negative Nellies. I could never. I'm a lone wolf. I don't have anybody. I've talked about that ad nauseum. Most of you have a family. You can start there. The Mormons used to, I don't know if they still do, and I'm not going to the long form of the name just because somebody decided they want us to say something this long. The Mormons used to have family home evening on Mondays. What a great idea. We actually incorporated that into my family, and I used the Mormon family home evening book. They had like a little workbook, and I used that for our family as a means to springboard off of. And basically what it was, and those of you who are LDS, please feel free to correct me. I'm just going off of memory here. But basically it was a time for the family, and I'm talking about the people under one roof, to stay home, to disconnect from the world to a degree, and to just be with each other, you know, in this busy world that we have. And there was typically, you know, there's prayer and stuff like that involved in it, maybe a short little Bible study or something. But the booklet I had, which was pretty thick, was pretty well thought out. It's like, you know, here's an activity for tonight. And it was kind of like Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, you know, kind of activity as far as, you know, here's 3 things to do, discuss this, do this thing with your hands, you know, do something. And a lot of it had to do with preparedness. Build a kit, do a little first aid thing, you know, talk about this, prep some food storage, dun 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 dun. And it was a really nice time for the family to come together and just be a family. This was before cell phones and before computers were really big when I was involved in this. That's got to be huge today. I mean, again, I don't know if they even do it or how they do it, but man, I would say turn off all the cell phones and lock them in a box out in the garage when we're doing this thing. Get away from those evil beasts. But that's training. And to a degree, it's got to be kind of planned out a little bit ahead of time and resourced, and so you're ready to go, so that when people show up, it gets going. A bad thing that happens to prepper groups, and then I'm going to finish up because I'm going long. A bad thing that happens to prepper groups is through a lack of planning, of training, they turn into coffee groups. We sit around and bitch about the government and drink coffee and, you know, or we show up and we go to the range and we all just shoot our cool guns and play show and tell like we're in 3rd grade. Nothing gets done. People get bored. People fall away. You have to train with intent. You have to train with purpose. You have to have a long-range plan, and your training should be culminating at a thing. I want my whole group to know how to do this. Once they know how to do that, we don't have to train on that anymore as much, you know, like every time we get together, but you have to come back and revisit it to make sure it stays fresh in people's minds over time. But there's a lot we need to get good at doing, and most of us aren't. And so that is my little bit on planning your training. Come up with the key things you're going to have to do, and then figure out a plan to get your people trained to do that. All right, I am interested in your questions. They will probably spur some further videos. Get out there and train. I'll see you out there.